UCLA has a chance to make a lost season memorable with a win over USC.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Welcome back, everydayers. Thanks for tuning in to the #1 sports podcast network out there. We're talking about today the scary teams in Big Ten men's basketball through Feast Week, since Big Ten starts next week. Big Ten play. UCLA women's basketball finished up their Players Era Festival run in the Thanksgiving week. What did that game against the likes of Duke look like? And then we'll talk about UCLA versus USC to lead things off. The Bruins, by all intents and purposes, have had one of the most dreadful seasons in recent memory. That includes Chip Kelly's first year in 2018. That includes the following season in 2019 and the oft-forgotten 2020 season in COVID, where UCLA didn't get that many games. They had a half schedule, choked a few. There haven't been a lot of memorable seasons. There have been a lot of forgettable seasons in recent memory, dating back to the end of the Jim Mora era through Chip Kelly, now into the mid-2020s. What was a decade ago? A lot of expectation with Josh Rosen coming in. You bring in, it's a new quarterback, a Nico, a decade later. UCLA has certainly not played up to expectations, but considering how they looked without Tim Skipper, with Tim Skipper, old coordinators, new coordinators, maybe it didn't look like UCLA had a chance for a bowl this year, but they cost those opportunities early, and they had some memorable moments by beating Penn State. But you go beat SC. This is one of those things that's going to be on the highlight reel, whether they're playing at the Rose Bowl, they're playing at SoFi, they eventually knock down Drake Stadium and make it UCLA's home campus. Doesn't matter where you're at. You're going to get honored and be a legend if you go beat USC. If you're Nico Iamaleava, and I think from what I saw from Ben Bulge of the LA Times, it looks like Nico is trending to play against USC, then he can become a UCLA mini legend in a sense. What do I mean by that? UCLA obviously has had a lot of drama. They had a lot of haterade from the Tennessee fans, a lot of haterade from the national media, criticized publicly a lot by myself, yours truly, and anybody who talks or covers UCLA. But you go back and you talk early October, a winless team, they go beat Penn State. You talk about that 3-game winning streak, and then you go out and potentially knock off USC. This is a chance to make a statement in a 2025 season that, hey, USC has some cracks in their armor. Lincoln Riley isn't all he's cracked up to be. He's not. He is, if you look through all the records, pretty much the same thing as Clay Helton, just more expensive. And UCLA needs to capitalize on that right as USC is on the precipice of getting a massive recruiting class. Now, what do I mean by that? A win by UCLA gives USC 4 losses and gets the USC fan base enraged and calling for Lincoln's job, putting to question all those commits from the local community, from the grand national recruiting stage to USC. And if UCLA can just go knock them off in the Coliseum, would be another win in the Coliseum for UCLA, where they've been dominant since the turn of the 2020s. The Bruins have not lost in this decade in the Coliseum, their former football home. Now, if they can go out and just shock everybody again, 3 touchdown underdogs. It's already happened once this year. Can the Bruins, as big-time underdogs, go on the road this time and get a massive win? And if you do that, that could shift the balance. And while there's a lot of question marks in the UCLA athletic department, there's a lot of question marks as to who might be the coach next year. Where are they going to play? Who's going to be the quarterback? Who's going to be what next year for UCLA? A lot of question marks that might not be solved as soon as we would like it to be as a UCLA fan. Well, the Bruins have to sit here and figure out a way to come out and get a dub against USC. It's ridiculous for me to say that, yes, they're massive underdogs. They have not proven over the last couple of weeks against Washington, Ohio State, in other games throughout the year that they can consistently put something together. Indiana, again, in Bloomington. That the Bruins have what it takes to go out and beat a USC team, but it's rivalry week. One of my favorite UCLA SC memories, obviously, is the 2006 game, 13-9. In 2018, UCLA was dreadful in Chip Kelly's first year. They still went out and beat USC. That was the highlight of the year. Do I know anything else that happened? No. I don't remember 2018 other than the first game against Cincinnati was dreadful when Chip Kelly's opener happened. DTR came in because Wilton Spate got hurt, and the Bruins went and they beat USC because they ran the ball, controlled the clock, and took down and wore down a USC team that didn't really care or play for anything. This time, a little bit better of a USC team against, you could argue, a much worse UCLA team from 2018. That's a little different debate. They've got a talented QB if he is healthy and ready to go. Even with Luke Duncan, the Bruins have to establish the run and then control the clock. When UCLA has won these games and been in them, they've been able to control time of possession, run the ball. Whether it's Nico, whether it's their entire backfield, they've controlled or at least been pretty equal in the line of scrimmage and broke off some runs. So you need to run the ball. Run the ball. Get a trick play to work. As embarrassing as that trick play was against Washington, UCLA needs one, because I'm assuming Tip Skipper, I think over under this week for trick plays is 1.5 to 2 for Tim Skipper. There could be a world where UCLA throws in 3. And it depends if you're really talking of a direct snap to a running back in Jerry Newhouse offense. I'm thinking fake punt. I'm thinking double pass, something that is not on the script that UCLA showcased on the tape so far this year, but good thing USC doesn't have a Connor Stallions cheating on the signs. UCLA got to go out there and make something happen to flip the script. And most importantly, the Bruins just can't get beat on special teams. You have to make your field goals. You can't, if you're going to go for a fake field goal, fake punt, something onside kick, it has to be executed. It can't flip the script. You can't have SC return a kick for a touchdown or for the Bruins have a punt blocked. You have to execute on the line of scrimmage, be physical with the USC team that truly doesn't have a lot to play for at home. You have to execute on the trick plays. 1 to 3, I think, is the window for Tim Skipper in this game. And then special teams cannot cost UCLA this game. I think it'll be closer than the 3 touchdown spread it's going to be. Can I come out and say UCLA outright is going to win? I want to. I hope so. I want to laugh at USC fans in their face again. I want a text mark be like, ha, ha, ha. But the Bruins have to go earn it. Just like they did 2 years ago when they played smash mouth football and beat down USC and wrongfully kept Chip Kelly in the job. But we'll find out if that's the case in a few years' time. Next, we're to talk about UCLA women's basketball. They came up, they were ready to go in Vegas, but they fell short against Texas. Then they played Duke without Lauren Betts. Let's analyze what they did next on Locked On UCLA. The holidays always feel a little easier when you know you got the perfect gift. And Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. This week is the best time to jump in because their cyber sale is here. The deals are huge. There's the quality, exactly what you're hoping for. The incredibly tender steaks, the rich flavor, the meals that make hosting or weeknight cooking easier, and it's the type of gift that brings people together. Save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide, an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale, and for an extra $35 off, use the promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. Cruising on here at Locked On UCLA, we're talking UCLA women's basketball. The women went to Vegas for their second time this season. I think the third separate time they've been on neutral courts. They had 2 in Vegas early. They had 1 in Sacramento, actually the Honda Center. And I think so. This is 6 games so far for UCLA women's basketball on neutral courts. The Bruins are now 5-1 in neutral court games. UCLA overall is 2-0 at home with no, and I mean no, true road games. So this is what the women have so far. UCLA in an absolutely crushing game, losing to Texas. That was a game where you're like, come on, guys. What are we doing? Down 23 late in the third, only to get that game to within 4, and a Gianna Neepkins made 3 to have it a one-possession game. The Bruins didn't get that. Now, the thing that did come back to hurt UCLA was that Lauren Betts had her shoulder hurt, came back in, played, and then prior to the game, Lauren Betts was listed as unavailable against Duke. And you're like, come on, guys. And not that I'm questioning Lauren Betts or UCLA, but just think about it again as a UCLA fan. You had a devastating loss, the potential last Rose Bowl game, football wise. Nico got hurt. You had UCLA men's basketball. Donovan Dent hurt. He got hurt. They're already missing a guy in Tyler Bilodeau. Embarrassing loss versus Cal. UCLA women came out flat Wednesday morning against Texas. Lauren Betts gets hurt, came back in, and then she's missing a game against Duke, who's supposed to be a top 10 team. And Duke's played like anything but. So it felt like, man, I wanted to see UCLA play South Carolina. Texas got to play South Carolina. But the shocker of the night, earlier in that night, Texas went and beat their SEC rival. Texas on a Rory Harmon bucket right before the buzzer, with less than a second left. Texas went and beat South Carolina. So Texas went and beat number 3 UCLA and number 2 South Carolina. They will either be number 2 or number 1 by the next time the AP poll comes out. And the Big Ten on the women's side looks a lot deeper than initially expected. And if the Bruins are still going to be injury prone, they're missing Sienna Betts, Lauren Betts at the moment, and Tamia Gardner. That's 3 players that are either the best player in the country, the substitute, or might be the other post player alongside Lauren Betts. And Sienna Betts is one of the best recruits in the country. And Tamia Gardner gives UCLA more shooting options. The Bruins can shoot and score. It just seems like sometimes that falls more on Gianna Neepkin's shoulders than we would like to see. Well, in this game, UCLA came out. I wondered how they would play if Lauren Betts didn't play. UCLA might have been very shorthanded, and Lauren Betts didn't play. So that meant UCLA's 6 players that they used against Texas was down to 5. 5 starters that Corey Close trusts. And then a couple of young freshmen, a couple of youngsters who Corey Close is like, you know what? Well, they weren't good enough to play against Texas, but they can get some run time against Duke. So this is where we saw against the Duke matchup. Gabriela Jaquez, 23 points, 5 boards, couple of assists in 36 minutes, hit 3 of 5 from downtown. You're going to hear that line similar throughout the rest of the night. Charlize Ledger-Walker came out 5 of 9 from downtown, 3 steals, 20 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and hit 5 threes. If any of these players could hit a 3 against Texas, UCLA might have completed the comeback, or the momentum could have shifted dramatically. Now, obviously, the difference between Duke and Texas is that Texas is relentless on defense. They keep all your hands in the passing lanes, and I've seen all the talk about how Texas harassed UCLA on the defensive side, and the Bruins didn't shoot a single free throw in the first half. Kind of ridiculous. It kind of is, but that's just how it played out. Kiki Rice, a 17.6 rebound affair. You had Gianna Neepkins, who was 3 for 3 from downtown. Kiki Rice had her own 2 threes. Kiki Rice with 17 points. Neepkins with 13. And Dugalich, surprisingly, of all the players who didn't hit any threes, was the only starter for UCLA that did not hit a 3, but she had 12 points and led the team in rebounds. So UCLA's starting 5 went 13 for 22 from downtown. The 4 players off the bench, in Muse, Bilic, Karamuzi Siegel, and Grant, those players, some of which played some mop-up duty, didn't attempt a 3, got in for some mop-up action, had a couple of points, but this game was largely driven, scoring-wise, by the intensity, the effort, and the cleanup from UCLA offensively. The difference between that game against Texas, the Bruins turned it over 20 times. Against Duke, still I think a couple too many, they turned it over 12 times. But when you go with 18 assists to 12 turnovers, those numbers look a lot better than what they did against Texas the day prior. Now, it did help UCLA played the early game, and you had the likes of Duke playing the second game and then the first game. So they got the short end. UCLA had that advantage there despite a short bench. The Bruins shot very well from the floor. Overall in this game, 52.5%. They shot 59% from 3, and then UCLA made 14 of their 16 free throws. Points in the paint had 30, and that's without Lauren Betts, winning this game by a final of 89-59. Now, Duke is not who we thought they were. They are not who we thought they were. Now, here's Duke. We'll see if the Blue Devils can figure it out by the time the season's over, because Duke seemed like one of those top 10 teams that wasn't going to be competitive against the true contenders, but would be good enough to knock off one or two. So far in the early going, Duke has lost to, I believe, a five-person West Virginia team after halftime. Duke's had a lot of things not go their way so far. So they fell to 3-5, including 0-2 in Vegas. UCLA gets a 1-1 split. They avoid an ugly loss. And with Texas beating South Carolina, that doesn't make the UCLA loss to Texas look as bad. Now, the difference is Dawn Staley and the South Carolina Gamecocks will get another chance against Texas, whether it be in the regular season or like last year in the SEC tournament or in the NCAA tournament. They got all those chances against Texas, did South Carolina. UCLA, though, will not get that opportunity. They're going to have to wait to a potential NCAA tournament bid. And if you're going to look at the seeding, if it's going to come down to that, these early season games are what decide the seeding. Last year, UCLA ran with the blowout of South Carolina to the tune of the number one overall seed. This year, Texas swept a pair of games in Vegas. They're unbeaten. They're looking like a team that's a true competitor for the overall one seed, for the AP Top 25 number one spot when the next poll comes out compared to UConn. Because Texas came out and honestly impressed me. They really did. I think if UCLA's fully healthy, it wouldn't have been a 23-point lead in the third quarter. And UCLA's comeback looked good. Their response versus Duke was great. The Bruins were up 30-7 after the first quarter. 30-7. Outside of the second quarter, UCLA outscored the Blue Devils by at least 5 points. Outside of Duke coming back within 20-ish points by halftime, UCLA did not mess around. They said they were angry, they showed it, and they played like it with intention to dominate from the opening jump. And it's great to see a team like that. Now, UCLA gets to take on a top 10, top 15 like opponent at home as they prepare to take on Tennessee on Sunday afternoon. UCLA takes on the Lady Vols, obviously a nationally relevant program. The thing that made Tennessee big last year was they hosted UConn, beat them, and then by the time UConn was really healthy, dominated the rest of the run and went on a national championship run. But Tennessee held the title in terms of the last team to beat UConn last year, and doing so in not fluky fashion. They owned that win. Now, can the Lady Vols, who've already dismissed one player this year, with Janiah Barker, come into Pauley and get a win? I don't think UCLA is going to overlook Tennessee. I don't think any of these players will be overlooking an opportunity to take down Barker and the Lady Vols, take down Tennessee, play in just what is one of their few home games, one of their few marquee home matchups this year. The Bruins have already taken down North Carolina, took down Oklahoma, but those are neutral floors. This is the big home game. Now USC will be an interesting one when they play in early January right after New Year's Day. The Bruins do get to play the likes of Michigan in Ann Arbor, but this is the premier home game. And I don't think the UCLA Bruins will be a little shy about it. They're going to come out and dominate Tennessee. I think they will. They're angry. Now, the only caveat here is what is the health like for Lauren Betts? If she's hurt, very different story. Tennessee is ready to go. If Lauren is available and the Bruins decide to rest her on a back-to-back and knew they would dominate Duke and just lead their starting five to victory, lean on that, then that's a little different. In this case, UCLA has to come out and assert authority from the opening jump and beat the Lady Vols. And then we can wrap up November, which has been a bit forgettable so far for UCLA, very forgettable, with some good vibes. Hopefully with the UCLA win versus USC, and then with the win versus Tennessee. Next, we're talking the Big Ten contenders as we wrap up Feast Week, because Big Ten plays upon us for the UCLA men. Coming up next. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And even if you missed the start of the season or the start of the game and want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything he'll score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps the game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. NBA. Cruising on here on Locked On UCLA, talking about the Big Ten contenders, some of the unbeatens here at the end of Feast Week. As of this recording, maybe things changed in a couple of days, but as of this recording, looking at the Big Ten website, these are the unbeaten teams. So if there's any games when you're watching this that have played out, maybe it's changed, but as of this recording, these are the teams that have looked really, really good so far. You've got the likes of Iowa, who's come out, started 7-0 with the new staff, new players. You got Michigan, who just blew the brakes, blew the doors off Gonzaga. What was supposed to be a Players Era Festival Tournament Championship for the ages, although the bracket's stupid bracket, they did get the matchup right. Gonzaga versus Michigan. Well, Michigan is proving that the Big Ten should have the top 2 or 3 spots, right? Should be Purdue, should be maybe Arizona, and then you put Michigan in that mix. 3 teams that have stepped above the rest in assertive wins where they come out and have dominated. Michigan beat Gonzaga by 40 on a national stage on a Turkey Day. Domination. And I think Gonzaga had a bad matchup there because when Graham Ike is your big man in the post, and then Michigan can just throw 6'10", 7-foot, most athletic, double-double machine in Yaxel Lendenberg coming off in the transfer portal, that's just a ridiculous combination for Dusty May, who continues to make UCLA and Cronin look foolish for just gifting a Daimara to Michigan. That's the difference between this UCLA team having almost everything possible versus Michigan having a complete team. Multiple posts, solid wings, a score first guard, a passing guard, a double-double machine, a Daimara out there. They can win on different guys every night, and Mara's been doing everything possible. So Michigan, 7-0. Michigan State, unbeaten. We'll see if this is one of those overrated Michigan State teams, but they're the defending Big Ten champs. Tom Izzo always has his team prepared, and UCLA has to go to Michigan State later in the Big Ten year, where that's a tough road trip. That is the toughest road trip for UCLA this year, going to Ann Arbor and going to East Lansing, both undefeated. We'll see what Nebraska looks like. Nebraska is unbeaten at this moment. You have Purdue. Purdue is the marquee home game for UCLA, a late January tilt, hosting the number 1 ranked Boilermakers at the moment. They're a Purdue team that a few years removed from making it to the national championship game with Zach Edey. They have all but forgotten Edey, and with Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn, that's a team that looks ready to go. And I was hoping Donovan Dent could challenge Braden Smith for Big Ten point guard supremacy, Big Ten Player of the Year supremacy, and boy, have I been wrong so far. Now, Smith's been a little healthier. Dent has not been getting the shot to go down. But Braden Smith, who is the preseason player of the year in the Big Ten, looking to be a national player of the year contender, yeah, he's making me shut up. And he is doing a lot of good things. USC just won the Maui Invitational with their old roster and Eric Musselman and Chad Baker-Mazara. Well, they're coming out. And I think that UCLA West Coast swing, when they host the Oregons, the Washingtons, and the USCs of the world, it's not going to be a 6-0 sweep this year. It's just not. And the way SC's played this year, can UCLA win one or both of those matchups against the Trojans this year? Because in previous years against Andy Enfield coached USC teams, Mick Cronin would struggle to get both wins. Hopefully that does not happen this year, but those UCLA SC games will mean a lot. Indiana, good start, 6-0 at the moment. Ohio State, 6-0. But Illinois looking pretty good. Wisconsin, unique. You have Northwestern, who still has Nick Martinelli. Those are scrappy teams. You mix in Washington. If they get healthy, they can be a super tough team to beat. Top to bottom, the worst record here in the non-conference is Oregon. And UCLA never beats Oregon easily with Dana Altman as coach and Mick Cronin as coach. That has just not happened with Dana Altman at the helm in Eugene. If the worst team you're telling me right now is Oregon, man, that is a loaded schedule for UCLA in the Big Ten because it is non-conference. UCLA was hopefully supposed to be 6-1 at this point, but that loss to Cal, blowing an opportunity against Arizona, those don't come back. Those come back to haunt you in tournament seeding. When you're struggling through the Big Ten and the committee wants to reward you for a grueling Big Ten schedule like they do for power conference teams, they're not going to do that for failing in the non-conference. Well, the early part of the schedule, UCLA's got to go to Seattle, host Oregon. Last year was flipped. UCLA went to Eugene and then hosted Washington. The Bruins have a chance against two teams near the bottom of the Big Ten in non-conference records to go 2-0 and get an early start on the Big Ten standings, just like they did last year. But an 8 p.m. tip in Seattle won't be forgiving, especially if Des Claude is healthy for Washington. What if USC's best players a year ago, Danny Sprinkle, who took Montana State to a few tournaments in a row, he's a good coach. So the Bruins can't sleep on the Huskies. The Ducks hosting, or the UCLA hosting the Ducks on a mid-Saturday tilt in the first weekend of December can't be forgotten. And then you play Gonzaga, Arizona State. Arizona State made it to the Maui Championship. That's a gauntlet of a schedule that I didn't realize was as tough as it might be. The ASU home game, the biggest non-conference home game for UCLA. Gonzaga better than expected despite losing by 40 to Michigan the other night. It's pretty tough. So Cronin has to get his team healthy, prepared, and if Bilodeau and Dent aren't ready to play or aren't healthy, UCLA could be looking at themselves at a 500 record on the other end of that in mid-December. With no Power 4 wins, mind you. UCLA does not have a win over a power conference team. That's not going to help the net. UCLA won't be in the rankings the next time they come out. You're going to have to build your way back in. Despite all the preseason hype, they got to earn themselves back in the rankings. But we'll talk about more. We're going to have the UCLA USC reaction. We'll talk UCLA Tennessee reaction. We'll talk more into UCLA basketball heading into Big Ten play on future episodes and the coaching saga. Who are they going to hire? All that and more here on this podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Welcome back, everydayers. Thanks for tuning in and have a happy Thanksgiving weekend. Hope you had a good turkey day and enjoy the holidays. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. UCLA, beat SC.